And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flippity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
It's not just big, it's
Yeah! Let's go!
Welcome and thanks for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey and I am your host. This week I will be joined by Teddy Pierce, author and true patriot. But before I talk with him, let's do our weekly roundup of this week's big news stories. As we begin the countdown to Donald Trump's inauguration in January, we are starting to get a picture of what his cabinet and advisors will look like. As of the airing of this show, Trump has selected 25 people for various positions in his cabinet. A few of the big names was Susie Wiles, who is the first female chief of staff, Elise Stefanik, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Michael Walls, National Security Advisor, Tom Horman, Border Czar, Lee Zeldin, EPA Administrator, John Ratcliffe, CIA Director, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Secretary, Dan Scavino, Deputy Chief of Staff, Taylor Budowich, Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications and Personnel, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, Matt Gaetz, U.S. Attorney General, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Health and Human Services Secretary, Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General, and, of course, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will head up the newly established Department of Government Efficiency. Speaking of Elon and Vivek and the Department of Government Efficiency, Musk posted on his X a couple days ago that all actions of the Department of Government Efficiency will be posted online for maximum transparency. He went on to say that they would have a leaderboard for most insanely dumb spending of your tax dollars and implored the public to let them know if they think they are cutting something important. I know a lot of people don't know what to think of this new department created by Trump and his incoming administration, and most liberals are freaking out about it, but personally I'm super excited and optimistic about positive changes that they're going to make and have been needing to happen for quite some time. Our government's gotten out of control between the nonstop wasteful spending and especially funding billions of our tax dollars to Ukraine. Overall, personally, I like almost all of Trump's appointments except for maybe Matt Gaetz. I still don't know how I feel about that guy, but otherwise I think most have been outstanding. In non-political news, finally, pharmaceutical giant Bristol Myers Squibb was hit with a $6.7 billion lawsuit on Thursday with claims that it had cheated former Celgene shareholders by delaying federal approval for 3 drugs, including the cancer drug Breyanzi. The lawsuit accused them of depriving shareholders of contingent value rights, an extra $9 per share in cash by dragging its heels and seeking approval of the drugs by specified deadlines. Neither Bristol Myers Squibb or its attorneys have yet responded to requests for comment on the matter. The state of Florida this week has sued FEMA, alleging that they discriminated against supporters of Donald Trump. FEMA actually admitted earlier this week that it had fired an employee who had advised her survivor assistance team to not go to homes with yard signs supporting Trump. The FEMA employee that was fired, Marmy Washington, and FEMA are named as defendants on Florida's lawsuit. FEMA said in a statement, "This is a clear violation of FEMA's core values and principles to help people regardless of their political affiliation." The lawsuit alleges that discrimination took place in the aftermath of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Hopefully, FEMA is one of the first agencies that Musk and Vivek take a look at, as it is widely viewed, especially by conservatives, as one of the most corrupt. The U.S. Postal Service said this week that it must continue to cut costs and boost revenue, or it will require a government bailout to help the organization avoid total financial collapse. USPS reported a net loss of $9.5 billion for its fiscal year, ending September 30th, over $3 billion larger than last year. Total operating revenue was $79.5 billion, up 1.7%. USPS said that the loss was mainly due to a year-over-year increase in non-cash workers' compensation expenses. Since 2007, USPS has lost more than $100 billion, and they are implementing a 10-year restructuring plan that aims to eliminate $160 billion in predicted losses over the next decade. For weeks now, the Northeast has endured a brutal drought, with some states such as New Jersey experiencing its driest condition in nearly 120 years. In New Jersey alone, more than 500 wildfires have been started since October 1st, and drought warnings are in place, and residents are being asked to do everything possible to conserve water. Reservoirs are being drained, air quality has been greatly diminished, and experts say that almost 60% of the Northeast is experiencing drought or near drought conditions. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all those affected, and we pray you will get some much needed rain sooner than later. In my final news story of the week, news outlet The Onion has won the rights to most of Alex Jones' InfoWars properties and assets after winning a bankruptcy at auction. Jones for years has been battling families of the victims of the Sandy Hook school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, who sued him for defamation after alleging he spread false conspiracy theories that the shooting never happened. Jones has said that the families were paid actors and were part of a plot by the federal government to drum up support for gun control. All right, now that we have talked about what's going on in the country, at this time I would like to welcome my guest, Teddy Pierce. Welcome, Teddy, and thanks for coming on my show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before I dive right into deep political commentary and start bombarding you with questions, can you tell the audience a little about yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm Teddy Pierce, author, political commentator, maybe a little too sure of myself, but that's all right. I don't like to triangulate too much, but I'll say I'm from the American Southeast and philosophy major in school. And, you know, when you're a lawyer, you go to law school and then you say, I'm a lawyer. Same as a doctor. You go to med school and you say, I'm a doctor. But if you go and get a degree in philosophy and then you say, I'm a philosopher, you sound like a stuck-up ass. So my educational background is in philosophy and really just been sort of an armchair person in the political sphere. I've always liked American politics and been involved there. And, you know, I really love philosophy. It's the science of human thought, and I'm a very systems-driven person. So that always, that, you know, kind of fits hand in hand there. But really, I started recognizing a couple of different deeper social trends and really started noticing that when I was rewatching old movies, you know, from when I was a kid, like Disney movies and stuff and TV shows when I was a kid. And I'm having to screen these for my kids, you know, because I want to make sure that I'm not putting trash in front of them. And things that I had seen 20, 30 years ago as a kid and then left behind and never saw again. I'm rewatching these again as a young adult and as a parent for the first time. And, you know, this is back 10 years ago. And I'm really starting to see all of these subtle drips, you know, of feminism, of breaking down the nuclear family, or even just the traditional family. And man, it just, you know, that was my red pill moment, if you will. And I was in the process of writing this book, and I'm seeing these social trends really trending towards this ideology of relativism. And so I think I'm going to write this really boring, you know, philosophy book, and maybe I can force my junior high son to read it one day. You know, that's what I'm thinking I'm going to end up with. And of course, the political landscape has just changed so much in the last 10 years. I really got way more than I bargained for in this book, and it ended up being about politics and global economics and the rest of it. And so didn't come to this from, you know, watching too much Dan Bongino and getting too riled up. It was really an intellectual exercise, and just the forces of the world brought me here. So here I am. Great.
Well, I appreciate that. The 2024 election is now officially behind us. And not only has Donald Trump reclaimed the Oval Office in what many consider to be a stunning landslide victory, but Republicans have also maintained control of the House of Representatives, and in another stunning victory to many, have also gained control of the Senate, flipping 4 seats from Democrat to Republican. Legacy media and liberals across the country are absolutely losing their minds right now. What are your thoughts of the 2024 election, and how do you see the future of America looking with Republican leadership taking the reins in January?
Oh man, that's a lot. The election itself was a lot, right? Uh, I think just a headline thought is, Team Red won, right? It's good. I'm glad that Trump's back in the White House. We got, you know, a
Right.
clear mandate. But really, there are some deeper kind of meta stories going on beneath the surface as well. And I think one of the clearest things is you really look at the data from 2024. The very obvious and clear winner from the night was Donald Trump, and it's not just because he won the presidency, but he outperformed almost every single Republican, and I think every senator and every congressman.
Significantly.
Yeah, and he even outperformed himself from 2020. So and really, I think the story that begins to line up there is that very few senators and congressmen who are going to be in this next session can truly say that they had a safe seat, or that Trump wasn't a reason in some part that they weren't pulled across the finish line. And so, really, I think at base, when everything shakes out, I think what we're seeing is this separation in politics, and it happened a while back, right? I think it happened sometime at the end of Obama's second term. Certainly, when Trump, ran for president began running in 2015, and so I think we're past the paradigm shift. It's just not apparent, it's not obvious to everybody yet, but we're past the Rubicon, if you will. Our Rubicon moment was Joe Biden stepping down. When Joe Biden stepped down, that marked the obvious end, the death of the liberal establishment. This liberal establishment that's ruled over Washington and over foreign affairs for the last 60 years, it's dead. It's gone. We have one of two futures, and that is the new left and this new coalition on the right. And we're going to live in one of those futures, but really, we saw so many people move. Well, let's start on the right. We saw so many people on the right shift to the left, like the Cheneys and the Bushes went and stood behind with the Clintons and the Obamas behind Kamala Harris. And not because she's some brilliant politician, but because she's a vapid, empty suit, and she represents the DC apparatus, whatever you want to call that, the deep state, the fourth branch of government. That's what she represents. And that's what they are there to help protect. They're there to protect that establishment. And Donald Trump, and then you have a lot of people previously from the left that come over and support Donald Trump. People like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, even getting an endorsement from Joe Rogan in the days leading up to the election. And so I think what we're really going to see is what we're seeing now is the fruition of that change of the guard. And you're going to see that the old battle line, right? The old front line was between Democrat Party politicians and Republican Party politicians. And I think we're moving into this new era where it's those protecting the establishment and the established world order, and those who are fighting that, and standing for we the people.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for your thoughts and insight on that. Let me also get your thoughts and opinions on a few of what I and many others consider to be a few of the biggest issues facing our country today and how we can right the ship. And it's not so much one particular issue. No, it's three different distinct issues that all tie in together. And that's the current woke ideology that is being pushed on our citizens and our children, censorship of free speech on a level and intensity that we have never seen before, and the weaponization of our justice system. What are your thoughts on, first, how we got here to start with, and second, how do we fix this? These issues are so deeply rooted into our society at this point. How does the Trump administration and Republicans get our country back to where Americans can freely speak their minds without fear and threats of being canceled, or worse, our children be able to go to school and hear the national anthem, be able to pray to God and for our country, not have to worry about men playing in women's sports, men in women's restrooms, drag queens reading and performing for small children, and politicians not being able to speak and govern without fear of being arrested and prosecuted for trying to do the right thing for our country.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we get it into and talk about the appointments. I'm loving these appointments, and each one is getting better and better and better. And one of the concerns that I had with when Trump coming into this second term, I knew things would be different, right? If he won, I knew that things would be different. He'd make better decisions. We'd have better policy. And I think we had a good first term, no denial of that. And so I thought we would get a better term, but I was concerned about how far he was willing to go, right? And at this point, exactly to your point about the woke ideology and drag queen story hour and things that if we continue to talk about, we easily get you kicked off of YouTube. But you talk about all of these things and people are just so sick of it. And I'm ready to go scorched earth on the woke ideology and leftism. And so these appointments that Trump is coming in, it looks like he's going that way. It looks like he's willing to go as far as we need to go as a country to really right this ship and get us back on track. When we had the Tulsi Gabbard DNI pick, I was ecstatic about that. RFK and the HHS pick. But I do have to say, when the AG pick for Matt Gaetz came out, I had this weird sense, this is weird, like pulling on my heart, and then something got stuck in my eye, and it took a long time. Several tears came out before I got that unstuck from my eye. But oh man, I've seen that guy argue, with Director Wray and Merrick Garland, and watch them stonewall him. It got to the point where I couldn't watch C-SPAN. I couldn't watch, those Senate hearings. It frustrated me so bad, just because things have gotten so terrible. Right. And I think what we're seeing, and I talk about this in the book quite a bit, is, I joke often that the Cold War never ended. The commies just body snatched the Democratic Party. And in a lot of ways, the way that these apparatchiks work in claiming institutional power, absorbing these different organs of the government, and then manipulating and warping them into serving their ideology, that very little difference between Pravda and the legacy media, right? Right. And so we're obviously dealing with a machine. We're dealing with not just individual power brokers trying to vie for power. We're obviously dealing with a system and a machine. And so I'm really glad to see Trump setting up at least telegraphing an administration that can really tackle this problem. It is a big problem. The individual parts of it are going to be hard, but again, what we're seeing is, well, if I can take one step back and I'll wrap up with this, is that we're seeing what we are seeing is all of the organs of a communist regime that have been slowly taking control of the machinations of power. And I really do think that we are in a turning point moment. And either they're able to seize complete control, they're either able to completely thwart Trump in his second term and get a controlled opposition Republican to run in 2028 and lose with dignity like Romney did to Obama, and then they just completely seize power and take back control of everything and clamp down absolutely. Or we the people stand up and push back. Absolutely. And that's a huge reason why I wrote the book is to say, like, hey, election day was not the end of anything. It's the beginning. That's and right. We as the people have to come together and have a clear enough vision of what the founders laid out and reclaim that, because we can't just simply say no. We have to have a positive vision, because in 2026, 2028, and in every election now, we're going to have to keep the mandate of the people that we got this time around if we're going to truly defeat these people.
Definitely. Next, let's discuss another major issue and one of the two marquee platforms of the Trump administration going into this election, and that's the economy. We've already seen some very positive signs way before Trump has even been inaugurated. Things are getting ready to turn and get better. Do you agree? And what do you think the next 4 years has in store for us?
Well, it's hard to say. The obvious thing economically is I think we're going to see better interest rates. We're going to see the stock market increase in real value. Things are going to, on the surface, economically look a lot better. We're also going to hopefully see a mass exodus of the bureaucratic state and the regulatory state out of Washington, D.C. And so we've never seen what that looked like in our lifetime, right? We don't know a world without heavy top-down regulation from DC stifling business and economics. I don't know what that necessarily, although different metrics, different economic metrics like take-home pay, lower taxes, all of those things are going to redound to the benefit of the American people. Long-term, I don't know what that looks like. As I lay out in the book in part one, it's all about the economy. And really what we have today is a global economy. And we have a global economy that's run by a smaller and smaller group of companies. Basically, the entire world economy, 90% of the world economy is controlled by 500 companies, right? And those 500 companies are financed through an even smaller number of banks, right? And then you really look at the underwriting of those banks, and what underwrites that is a private banking cartel that even controls our own Federal Reserve. And so we do have a very precarious situation on our hands economically. And so, of course, it's going to rebound to the benefit of all. How much power that gives the people that are already kind of the power brokers and gerrymandering things behind the scenes, that's going to be the interesting thing to me, is to see there's obviously going to be pushback. The establishment in DC is going to push back against Trump big time. But they have the reason that the DC apparatus has so much power and control is because their allegiance is to this globalist cabal of people, and they are attempting to see the revolution to the end, right? What they're attempting to do is a soft coup of the entire West, and of course America's the crown jewel in that. They can't win their plans if they don't beat us.
Right.
But to install these just super heavy, centrally planned bureaucratic regulatory states that have allegiance to this global United Nations, whatever they choose to call it. But that's essentially what the giant trap that we're in. And so whether or not they're going to let Trump succeed, really, we are talking about people who are so wealthy. I say in the book, they don't count their dollars in their bank account. They weigh their wealth in terms of ownership, percentage control. And so they could tank the entire stock market and they still own most of it. So they don't care, right? They couldn't spend the trillions of dollars in their bank accounts anyway, in theirs or their 100th generation's lifetime. And so when you're dealing with that kind of that person, playing chicken with that kind of person doesn't pay off very well. So if my theories are correct, and I think I have more than theories. I think I have data on my side to prove. But it will be interesting to see, because America taking its own sovereignty back from the DC swamp is going to be a massive global upheaval. And it will be interesting to see what big power brokers move in the deep, right? In the deep waters of the swamp, and just to see what the next 4 years look like. But again, I guess time will tell. But in the meantime, I can afford to buy a house again. That's great.
Absolutely. The second major platform of the Trump campaign this year was immigration. President Trump has vowed to undertake the largest deportation in history, and has promised mass deportations of millions of unregistered illegal immigrants early on in his administration. What are your thoughts on this? And do you think that his administration will be successful in tracking down and deporting millions of people and finally securing our borders that have been wide open during the course of the Biden administration.
Yeah, that was well. I'm a lot more confident about that now that Homan is the borders guard.
Right.
Yeah, that guy's awesome. But really, I think as effective as he was in the first term, I mean, I don't think that there's a way to completely stop illegal immigration. The idea that we're going to get to zero is that's when drone swarms start shooting people and you get to a level it's a nightmare for anybody.
Yeah,
you don't want to get to that point. But obviously, I think Trump was very, very effective in his first term, to the bane of many a Democrat. But I think this time around, regardless, even if he just adopted the exact same immigration policies, I think he'd be able to be more effective, again, because he has the mandate of the people in a way that he just didn't have in his first term, especially when it came to illegal immigration. I think we've had 4 years of people, especially in urban centers like Chicago and LA and New York, to see what this does. It got to every corner of the country. Everybody got to see the effects. It wasn't just, the people of South Texas suffering miserably for it, or, Arizona and California. And so from that standpoint, the sheer dynamics are different. So I think we have a much better chance at that. Again, with Homan in charge, and I really truly believe just shutting the valve off of aid, supplies, rental assistance. Here's a plane ticket, fly wherever you want to in the country. One, that's going to stop people from coming. And then two, I think that, people talk about how expensive it's going to be to mass deport people. It's not going to actually be that expensive, right? We can say we're going to give you one more gift, and that's a plane ride home.
It'll end up saving us money in the long run, isn't it?
Yeah, and just turn yourself in at any consulate, and you can get a free ride home, and no harm, no foul.
Right.
and most people, I think that most people would deport themselves at that point. As Homan said, it doesn't have to be cruel. We can deport whole families.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the Great Reset. I know you refer to it and discuss it in detail in your book. Can you first tell the audience and those who aren't familiar, what exactly is the Great Reset? And second, is there anything we can do to stop it?
Well, yeah, that's the Great Reset, for lack of a better term, is just a placeholder, I think, for the fruition of this global cabal's plans, right? I talk about that. Klaus Schwab, amazingly, 3 weeks after COVID hit, published his book about, life in the post-globalist age. We need a Great Reset. And even the World Economic Forum produced a video about their predictions. I don't know if they're threats or promises at this point, but they talk about. I don't know if you're familiar with the video, but the very first prediction that they have for 2030 is that you will own nothing, but don't worry, you'll be happy about it.
I remember hearing that quite a bit.
Yeah, and so really, if you take them at their word on this highly produced video, which they clearly didn't field test before they went straight to production, they say you'll own nothing, you'll rent all of your experiences from the world. America won't be the leading superpower. There will be basically a rule by expert class that takes the place of America on the world stage. You'll eat less meat. You'll be taxed for any use of carbon. They don't tell you where the proceeds of the taxes go to. I don't know if there's like an Alex Jones was right jar or something somewhere where all those tax dollars go into.
Poor Alex Jones. Yeah, so he hasn't had a good week, has he?
No. But yeah, so the idea, and really, we'll see what Donald Trump being this. Donald Trump 2016 was a giant wrench in their plans. Donald Trump 2024 is definitely a even bigger wrench in their plans. But the Great Reset signifies the world economic, the people, and it's not the World Economic Forum itself, right? It's the people, the silent brokers of power behind the scenes at the World Economic Forum. They have this plan for world domination. And, 2030 is the year that they set, right? It's not mine. It's not my speculative year. It's what they said. And so the idea is that that this soft coup would take over, and the DC establishment and the Canadian establishment, the French establishment, it would all be in place, all adopting these crazy leftist woke ideas for the purpose of destabilization, for the purpose of bringing the world to a breaking point, for the purpose of taking these deeply indebted nations. We're all indebted to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is owned by their private banks, right? And they can show up and be the strong man to save the day if only we go along with their 2030 agenda, right? As long as we go along with the Great Reset agenda. And the goal ultimately is for us to select safety and security over freedom. The meme of the lion in the wild and the lion in the cage, right? One of them's cared for it. One of them's completely taken care of and fed and housed, and the other one's free. Choose wisely. And so it's kind of a manufactured. The whole goal was to get us to the brink, create some sort of manufactured cataclysm or crisis, and get us to the point where our hands are so reached out in need of a savior that we would bring on their plans, be relieved of our debt, and we would enter this new 1,000-year reign of the world as they see fit. But just to capstone that, though, I lay it out in the book. I compare it back to communist ideologies, and really it's communistic in the idea of how they plan to be totalitarians, right? Because communism is a unicorn; it can't actually come to life. But people preaching communism have great power over the people, and so what they plan to do is install the only thing that a communist can install, which is a dictatorship that preaches communism for the sake of the subjugation of the people, right? And so that's ultimately what we would end up having. And they would see global communism, right? They would see the revolution come to its final global end. And anybody loyal to the party would serve as their regional delegates. And they want the world to look as similar as possible, but we're living in the brave new world where we eat cricket hot pockets because it's a lot easier to give us bugs for protein than traditional farming. And we live under this the global system of big ag, big food, big pharma. It's produced globally and as cheaply as possible. Big healthcare prints our organs for us, and we end up in this world where we have a social credit score and a global digital currency, and we're just completely beholden to them for everything. And if they can keep that going for 100 years, for 3 generations, and convince everybody that it's kind of okay, then it doesn't matter how bad it gets, right? Ultimately, everyone will still sing "I'm proud to be an American," right? Well, the French will still have their national anthem, but we will have fallen under the Great Reset, and who knows when Providence would ever liberate us from that.
Now, I'll be honest, I have not yet had a chance to read your book. Having 2 kids, a full-time job, and writing and producing this show, as you can imagine, I don't have a lot of free time. I have no free time.
Yeah.
But I think probably the most fascinating thing to me that I can't wait to read and explore is how you not only identify the people and parties responsible for the tyranny that we face in this world today, but you tie them to the institutions across the world that they use as a mechanism for achieving their evil goals. Yeah. Obviously, without giving away everything in the book, can you talk a little about some of these people and institutions that seek to control and manipulate the global population?
Yeah, for sure. So I break it down in the book about the World Economic Forum, and the reason I focused on that particular group is because it's really the front office, it's the retail shop for this global elite, and I've done this in a couple of interviews, and I always feel necessary to preface this because I get to this point and I start talking about ancient bankers and this generational wealth. And I know that anti-Semites right now are just licking their lips waiting for me to say the secret word. But no, this group of people are of many different ethnic backgrounds. Okay, so that's not what this book is about. It's not diatribe against the Jews or whatever. But anyway, it's a group of people who have had generational wealth for a very, very long time. And they're people whose names are not in the mouths of modern people because, they live in the lap of luxury. They live behind the scenes. They vacation in places that, you definitely can't reserve on a travel site, right? Their third best estate is probably better than, Buckingham Palace. And they live in this lap of luxury. And so you have this world elite. I have a URL in the book that lists these people by name. So that you can go look at them for yourself, but you start throwing some names around and you start getting stuff taken down really quick and censored. But it's a very, very small group of people that are orchestrating these things. And so when you start getting to the level of the ultra wealthy, like Mark Zuckerberg or a Bill Gates, a George Soros, these people still, they're on the Forbes list, right? They're still counting their wealth and the real power behind the throne. I call them the thrones of Davos. They wouldn't dignify Forbes by being on their list. And frankly, if you put their net worth on Forbes list, it would shock, it would shock everyone awake really quick. Yeah. But what we see in the retail shop of the World Economic Forum are names like Yuval Harari and Klaus Schwab. He's the founder, and they're wealthy people. I'm not saying that they're not wealthy, but their boss's wealth makes them blush. And those people are what I like to call the intellectual priestly class of the World Economic Forum. They take these stupid ideas like transgenderism and transhumanism and ESG policies for businesses, social credit scores for corporations, and they like twist them into, and they sound like professors explaining how wise and smart all of these terrible ideas are. And that's their job. Their job is to show up to the forum and lead it and bring in the world leaders and show the clout of the World Economic Forum and spin all of these treacherous ideas that are meant to enslave us and twist them into articles and, social media posts about how they're just trying to help the world and we're trying to advance the human condition and all of this stuff. Meanwhile, they're not elected by anyone. They've self-imposed their importance onto world politics. And of course, the World Economic Forum meets in Davos every year. And so hence the name Dethrone Davos and calling them the thrones of Davos. And so they pull together their group of young world leaders and then, different political leaders from all across the spectrum. And really what you're doing is you're going to kiss the ring, right? You're going to Davos to show your allegiance, to show that you're down with the plan. And so that's why you see them go back to their home countries and be in such ideological lockstep. But really the World Economic Forum serves to, a lot like the legacy media here in America, just defend anything that the Democrats do and condemn anything the Republicans do. And it just creates this fog, this like fog of lies that just so upsets the narrative and sets the narrative to what they want. The World Economic Forum as this front retail shop does that and creates this sense that you're crazy if you would question whether or not we ought to go to plant-based, animal or insect-based proteins. There we go. And then ultimately, I think it's really easy to say too, like, oh, well, it can't be a conspiracy. You're crazy. You're not seeing clearly, because everyone would have to be in on it, and there'd be a whistleblower or something like that. And really, and I go into this in great detail in the book, and how much they've learned from the failures of communism of the 20th century.
Absolutely.
which is they understand communism as a very powerful destructive mechanism until it destabilizes to the point that you can latch onto control. And unfortunately, there's always a Berlin Wall or somewhere to go. Well, in their plan, there's nowhere to run, right? They're going to control the world. And so with just wrapped up in all of this, and how I get into part 3 and wrap the entire book up, is to say, it's not necessarily a conspiracy of I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, or you be the low minion and I'll be the king. It's not anything like that. The small cabal that really control the global economy, their wealth was baked into that equation. And the reason that everyone is in such ideological lockstep, and the reason that people are so just bought into the program, is because it's the theology, right? They're all following the same theology and the same underlying philosophy of relativism, which melds perfectly with communism, because you have to adopt relativism, you have to be godless, and to accept realism, you have to accept God. And so that really, that one explains why they are so immersed and so self-assured of their own ideas, because it fits in their perfect inverted illogical worldview of relativism. It makes perfect sense. And then that's why we're seeing such polarity, and really why we're seeing such a stark left-right divide, is because it's not just a matter of arguing over nominal tax rates, right? We're beyond the pale there. We're really talking about two fundamentally different philosophical frameworks for the future of the country. And I think that's why it's so important for us to understand what we're dealing with, and to move forward eyes wide open, so that we're not thinking that we're, just need to find some middle ground or work. And, there's no middle ground between communism and Americanism, right? We're going to live in one future or the other. And if we who oppose relativism and communism aren't clear-eyed about that, and have a good vision, and can bring the American people along with that vision, then we're going to live in their future by default.
That's some great, insightful stuff right there. So again, the name of the book is Dethrone Davos. So what made you write this book? And are you at all worried about any kind of retaliation from some of these very powerful people for helping expose them?
Well, I guess I would say I would like to be a big enough, fly in the ointment that I could get on.
Yeah.
and only because I want the message to get out there. I deeply love our country. I want to make sure that we do recognize this globalist force for what it is, and can turn the tide, and at least be the one last bastion of hope in the world, no matter how successful they are in their great reset. So, as of the airing of this interview, no, but also I'm very happily married, and I have no suicidal thoughts. And
putting that out there, just so everybody will know that here you hear it on the show.
I have no dirt on the Clintons. I know nothing about the Clintons.
That's good. That's great. All right, so where can we get your book?
It is available on Amazon, and exactly to your last point, until it gets kicked off of Amazon. It's on Amazon for now. Please go to Amazon, buy the book. If you want paperback or hardcover, it doesn't matter. The cut for me is the same either way, so I don't want people to feel compelled to buy the buy the hardcover. But if you like hardcover, get the hardcover. Also, it is on Kindle right now. And then we are in production for an audiobook to come to
Awesome.
Audible.
Sweet. All right, last question. So this show is called the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. I'm planning a bunch of upcoming shows about prepping, and I myself am a committed prepper. Are you a prepper, and do you think that emergency preparedness is important?
I do think so. I don't think that certainly in these we live in uncertain times,
Absolutely.
and it's easy to get lulled to sleep. It's easy to feel like the vaunted institutions and the safety and security that we've lived behind in America are never going to go away. And I saw a really funny meme about, it was just a picture of a bullet, and it said the bullet that Trump dodged, and then it was a picture of Kamala Harris, and it says the bullet America dodged. And I think that that's very, very accurate. We're really flirting with that precipice, and it's extremely important, especially if you live in a city. Especially if you live in an urban area.
Definitely.
You need to have extra food on hand. Work it through your pantry. It's easy to do. Keep a couple of weeks rations going. But certainly, if you have the means and the ability to be prepared, certainly not to put yourself in debt or to.
No, you got to do it within your means. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's extremely important, and really, I would love to be able to teach my kids prepping and about the American Constitution, so that maybe in a post-apocalyptic age they can rebuild, and then teach them how to survive and teach them survival skills. And I hope they never have to use them, but I'm going to teach them how to do that, and I just think it's immensely important. And then also, if you're not in a city and you can get out on land, we previously lived on land. We had to move, relocate, Build Back Better just really worked out for us. But anyway, but yeah, we had chickens, raised bed gardens. Any sort of sustainability and self-sustainability is really important. And I'll tell you, it's really important for two reasons. Not only so that, you can dig some potatoes up when you're really hungry in the wintertime, if things go absolutely south, but, I grew up, we grew up farming and ranching, and I grew up on some acreage. So I knew self-sustainability from a very early age. And if there is nothing more edifying for you spiritually, theologically, just formationally, than knowing that you can provide for yourself. If more people know how to do that, the more people that know how to do that, the better chance we have of dethroning Davos and saving America.
There you go. All right, well, Teddy, I appreciate you coming on my show and giving us your thoughts and insight on what's going on in our country and the world. It's been a lot of fun talking about these issues. I think we're both cautiously optimistic about the future.
Yes.
Thanks to my audience for listening. Be sure to order a copy of Teddy's book, Dethrone Davos, for yourself. Please remember to like and follow the show on social media, X, Facebook, and Truth Social. And you can email the show at thepppodcast@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.